Hello everybody. So BIBIBOP is kind of like this Asian fusion restaurant, and it's one of my favorite restaurants. It's kind of like a Subway or a Chipotle, except it's kind of Asian style cuisine. And so I wanted to make BIBIBOP at home today. So that's the meal of the day. So welcome to Make Meals. We make regular food for regular people, and I want to be trying to make some kind of version of what I would get at BIBIBOP. Let's see how it goes.
All right, so let's get started. The first thing we need to do is we need to get out some pots and pans and then get out some of our rough ingredients. So of course, it's Asian food, so we're gonna need rice. You can do noodles and stuff. BIBIBOP has noodles, but I usually go for rice because I like rice. I didn't bother rinsing my rice because I'm a savage, and no, not really. I just really didn't care enough to rinse it. So didn't rinse my rice, just put some water in it and got it on the stove because I knew that was going to take the longest. I had some frozen chicken breast that I cut up in 2 chunks. Now, this is one of the things where I think that BIBIBOP does things a little bit differently. I think they cook their chicken breast and then they cut it up, but because my chicken was frozen, I knew that it wasn't going to cook all the way through properly if it wasn't cut up first. And so I decided to cut it up before I cooked it, which did give it a little bit of a different texture than what I would get at BIBIBOP, but it still cooked up just fine. Needed to get out a lid to put on the rice so that the rice would not boil over. And then we got the chicken on the grill. So I'm using a flat top grill attachment here for my stove. Of course, you can use a pan if you want to, but I have this on my stove at all times, so I just use it a lot. Next thing I need to do is grab a little oil so we can get some oil on the pan. You definitely don't want to start frying up the chicken without any oil, or else it's going to stick really bad and make a big mess. So we need to get some oil on there, and that's also going to allow our spices to stick when the time comes for that here shortly. So I'm just kind of mixing it up a little bit, trying to get that oil dispersed a little bit better. Getting out some cooking utensils that I know I'm going to need. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to start getting our canned goods ready. So I already had the cans of stuff out, and so my BIBIBOP order usually is corn and beans and potatoes, and then of course chicken and rice and cheese. And so I got some canned potatoes just because it's easier to do the canned potatoes than it is to do fresh potatoes, especially when you're just cutting them up for one. So I decided to pull out these canned potatoes, chop them up into approximately the same size shapes, and then little chunks, and put them in the pan. And those are going to need to fry up on their own. That way they'll get nice and crispy and get some of that crisp golden texture to them. Kind of like home fries, essentially, is kind of how BIBIBOP does their potatoes. And so I was like, I'm going to do something approximate to that. So get a little pepper and salt on our chicken and on our potatoes here, so that they have some good seasoning. And then we're going to go ahead and get these potatoes frying up. So we're also going to grab a little bit of extra seasoning. I'm going to get some accent and put it on the chicken so that it has a little more flavor. And then I thought I was going to go for seasoning salt, decided against the seasoning salt, and instead decided to run and grab some seasoning that I got. It's locally made seasoning. It's kind of like a Chipotle flavored seasoning that I got from my brother for Christmas, and I decided to lightly put that on the chicken. I don't want to put a lot on the chicken because I don't want to overdo it. I don't want the chicken to be the dominant flavor in the bowl, because the way BIBIBOP does stuff is a lot with sauce, and I wanted the sauce to be the dominant flavor in the bowl. And so I really focused on trying to make sure that the sauce will be the dominant flavor. So I flavored the chicken a little bit, but didn't want it to go too far because I didn't want the chicken to lead. So we're draining our beans, and we're going to put our beans and corn in one pot. Normally they don't do that, but I didn't want to dirty an extra pot, and I knew I was going to put them together anyway. So what was the point of making it in 2 separate pots? I could just put it in one and heat it up that way. So now we have all of our ingredients on the stove. Oh, drop the knob for the stove. And we have all our ingredients on the stove, and we can just start cooking things up. So got the potatoes frying, got that chicken frying. I knew that the rice is going to take the longest, and so I tried to time everything out so that everything would get done about the same time. I decided to move the corn to the other burner because the burner on the right side is a little bit smaller. and so it's more of a sauce burner and not a cooking burner. So I decided to switch them up so that we could get things cooking approximately the same speed. So now just take a little time while things are cooking to rinse out the sink. Of course, you got all the baby stuff there on the left side. And then we're going to go ahead and just watch our food. Make sure everything's cooking fine. Watching for the chicken to get nice and crispy. Watching for our potatoes to get crisped up. We want everything to have a nice, good, crisp texture there. And of course, you can see that browning starting to happen on the potatoes. They're starting to look really good. And then our chicken is starting to cook through. Of course, I didn't bother mixing up all of the corn and beans when we went in there, so I was like, I'll take a moment to kind of mix those up. That way it's not just the beans in the bottom that are getting cooked and then the corn stays cold on top. Mix them up so they can get nice and even. And right there I thought I heard somebody outside, but there was nobody out there, and so I'm just imagining things. Put a little bit of salt in here with the corn. And then we're going to go ahead and start getting our sauces out. Now, I went for Polynesian here because that was the most Asian thing that I had on me in the fridge. And then I was going to pull out some hot sauce to put on there too. But ultimately, I decided against the hot sauce because the thing about BIBIBOP is I said that it's kind of an Asian fusion restaurant. It's kind of like a Chipotle. And really, when you think about the ingredients that you're actually using, a lot of the ingredients are the same stuff as Chipotle. The main differentiators are just the flavors used. So corn, beans, chicken, rice, those are all things you can get at Chipotle. And so I felt like by putting a Chipotle style hot sauce on there, would have made it lean too far to the Mexican side of things, too far to that Central American flavors. And so I decided I wanted to go without the hot sauce and instead lean towards some more Asian style sauces. Now, Polynesian's obviously not particularly Asian in any kind of way, but it was definitely more Asian than the hot sauce, and so that's why I decided to go that route. I did toss a little bit of the soy sauce onto the chicken, one, just to give it a little more color, and two, to give it a little bit of a sweetness, because soy sauce kind of has a bit of like a kick of sweetness, especially when you cook it down. And so that's why I decided to put a little bit of soy sauce on there. And now I'm just trying to make sure everything gets nice and finished up, and then it's almost time to start getting our bowl ready. So you can see the rice there is coming together beautifully. Even not rinsing it, it still turned out just fine. And so anyone who tells you don't have to rinse your rice, or you have to rinse your rice, they're definitely wrong. You don't have to rinse it. And there's actually a great video by Adam Ragusea where he talks about that kind of stuff. Just taste testing the rice, making sure it's good, and it is. And so now we can just make sure that our chicken and potatoes are finished. And now we're turning everything off and we're ready to get things going here. So we're going to go around, grab a bowl. And I'm going with this big guy, although I wish I would have went with a different bowl, because one of the things that they do at BIBIBOP is they actually separate all your stuff in little corners of the bowl, but this bowl's a little bit too small to do that, and so everything kind of ended up on top of each other. And if I would have done it again, I would have chosen a larger bowl, probably like a to-go container or something like that, where it's a little more room. But it still tasted fine. It just didn't look as pretty on the bowl. So we're going to dump some of our potatoes in there. The potatoes are great at BIBIBOP because they're awesome filler. I mean, you don't get a ton of meat, but the potatoes really fill in that where the meat lacks. They fill in that void and really just fill you up. It's really a beautiful thing how they structure the bowls there, where you can get so much food for so little money, and you walk out definitely feeling full. So now we're going to grab some cheese. I think I went with Colby Jack here. The reason I went with Colby Jack was just because it was more on the mild side. I wanted something more mild tasting. Did have sharp cheddar and stuff in there, but I didn't want to go too crazy. Of course, mozzarella would have been good too, but it doesn't have a ton of flavor. And so now I'm decorating here with honey glaze and then the Polynesian sauce. Again, tried to go with two things that were more Asian style. And not Mexican style. And then now it's time for the taste test. Of course, not the most beautiful bowl in the world, but it was very delicious, and I really hope you guys like this video. So thanks. Bye.
I've only got one.